On this week's show, we're going to revisit a theme that we first discussed a couple of months ago. And that theme is the one around internal career mobility. Well, what is that? In short, it's how do you get a job in the same firm you're already working for? What are those opportunities? Because guess what? This has become a big, hot topic in organizations since the pandemic. Why is it a hot topic? Lots of reasons. We'll explore those reasons with our guest today. But what we want to do is try and figure out what it means for organizations and to step back and look at the bigger picture and the bigger questions that internal career mobility asks. It's not just a simple case of, can I find a job within my own organization? There's a lot more going on. And to help me unpack those ideas, we literally have the woman who wrote the book on internal career mobility joining us here today. Before I introduce our guest today, I just want to remind you that The Shortlist is a show that runs live on LinkedIn and YouTube every Wednesday afternoon, European time. But we also are available as a podcast on all your favorite formats. And you can check out all our previous shows, the videos, the podcasts, and check out our lineup for future shows by going to socialtalent.com/The Shortlist. You can subscribe for updates on The Shortlist from there. That brings me to our guest today. Our guest is Anne Fulton. Anne Fulton literally wrote the book, The Career Engagement Game, Shaping Careers for an Agile Workforce. She is a best-selling author, but she is also the CEO and founder of tech company Fuel 50 and is massively passionate about this area. And tell us about your organization, why you built a company around your passion. What is that passion and why is it so important?
Yes, amazing. Thank you, Johnny. So yeah, Fuel 50 was founded to actually create career path transparency for employees across the globe. And here we are 5 years later, having built out a true talent marketplace where we're connecting people to opportunities. So our little tagline is your future, our passion, so the future of you and the future of your workforce. So reskilling's never been more important than it is today. And so we're helping organizations that are really focused on creating reskilling for their workforce and creating futures and a transparent talent marketplace in their organizations, whether it's eBay or Pepsi or Coca-Cola or some of the world's largest banks and companies like Abbott Labs. So we're really focused on helping those organizations on their journey of delivering true, transparent, fair career pathways in these organizations that delivers routine.
And you guys, you and your organization are truly looking at this from a global perspective. I know that your business is based in the US, serving customers globally. You're joining us today from London, England, and you're originally from New Zealand. So we're touching on a lot of countries, a lot of zones there today, I think, Anne. And I'm gonna maybe get your opinion on some topical items first, right? As you know, on The Shortlist, what we do is we start the show by launching into the news to see what's happening in the world of work today related to the topic we're talking about. So I'm going to ask my good colleague Niall to give us that first article. In fact, not really an article, but a piece of research. Niall, over to you. You're on the button there, Niall. So this is a piece of research, a meaty piece of research here that we want to address and talk about. And it's called Discriminating Systems, subline here, Gender, Race, and Power in Artificial Intelligence. So this is a fantastic piece of research. I want to share it out. It's a 33-page publication. But for those of you who kind of are put off by a 33-page publication, it's got a great summary with recommendations at the very front for you to get into. And I'm going to ask you, Anne, to kind of tell us why this is important, why this piece of research is important, and what do you believe the impact is on the workplace from the conclusions of the authors of this research?
Yeah, I think we love this little piece of research because of the fact that it's raising some really important issues. We obviously, with the pandemic era and these new forces around Black Lives Matter, putting diversity and inclusion kind of front and center today, that transparency in your systems has never been more important, and we need really good people intelligence to make great people decisions right now, whether it's who's going on furlough, who's coming back from furlough, who's being retrenched, who are you placing where across the organization. So I think as never before, it's really important that we're making decisions around people that are absolutely above reproach. And I thought this article was super interesting because of the fact that it's showing how careful we've got to be in terms of our systems. And we're seeing the emergence of AI and algorithms, kind of dominating our lives and our worlds. And I think it's really important that we are very careful and thoughtful around the way that we're using these intelligent systems to help make great people decisions. So from our point of view with our clients, it's so important that we're making sure that not only are we careful, but we're actually mitigating risk around people and ensuring that we're above reproach in the way that we're using that data, right? So I've always personally believed that great data makes great decisions. It's really important that we have quality information. But the more intelligent these systems become, the more careful we need to be with how that information is being used. Can I just give you a little soundbite example?
Yeah, please.
And I think one of the risks is that if your AI is telling you that this particular position was filled in the past by 5 middle-class white males, sorry Johnny if I'm insulting you, but just because that's happened historically does not necessarily tell you that that's going to be the best fit person. So we need to be so careful that our data is being used in a way that is really supporting the organization's purpose and values around diversity and inclusiveness. And so I think increasingly this kind of research that we've seen today is going to help us be more thoughtful and robust around the way that we're using AI to make people decisions today.
So I really got a lot out of this, right? It made me stop and think in so many ways, Anne, right? And let me share with you some of the ways this got me. First of all, I didn't know this piece of data, which appears on, I think, the 5th page. It says that, first of all, addresses the inequities of women in the workplace, but it talks then about Black workers. And it says that in only 2.5% of Google's workforce is Black, and what Facebook and Microsoft each at 4%. I thought to myself, hang on a second, they're US multinationals. I'm going to guess at least half their workforce is in the US. I was thinking, what percentage of the workforce is which gender and which ethnicity in the US? And I was fascinated, first of all, to find that in the US, 51% of all people are women. So I'm a minority, I discovered, in the US, which is interesting. Which is hard to believe. And then second of all, that I think it's about 13 or 14% identify as Black, and only 2.5% of Google's workforce, only 4% of Facebook and Microsoft. It really just highlights something's wrong here. And then I was thinking about my experience with working with recruiting teams when they talk about the importance of diversity in their efforts. And in this world today, where we're on Zoom calls with the teams, and you can see everybody, it happens so time and time again. I look at the faces and the importance. I look around and I see the ethnically diverse person, and I scream inside my brain to go, please tell me they're not from the D&I team and they're actually in the team. And time again, it's no. The ethnically diverse person is the D&I person, and all the white people are the recruiting people. And you kind of just, my heart sags, right? Because if you don't have representation of the customer base, of the population base in the teams solving the problem, you'll never get there. And this article uncovered the unbelievable kind of white maleness of the AI industry, which I didn't know about, Anne. I don't know if you did this, that the individuals working on the algorithms, because they all tell you that they don't have the bias that you're talking about, Anne, that, we correct for that. But then when you read this, it says, hang on a second, all of the people working in these companies, working on in these professions, nearly all of them are non-diverse. So therefore, how confident are you that they're addressing these problems if they aren't actually even representing the workforce that they're trying to mitigate the discrimination against within their own teams? It just struck me as there's a big problem here.
Yes, I was equally horrified when I saw this, the data around who was actually building these algorithms, and, what are we perpetuating there. So I think, that may be what it is. And I know in our own team, we've tried to, be really diverse and representative in terms of who is, building our AI and algorithms. But I think more importantly, it's really looking closely at how data is being used within our clients. And then we can we can help ensure that the algorithms are treating people as fairly and inclusively as possible. So, but it needs to be driven by that organization's data. So our view is, yes, we can create algorithms specifically for you, but we would only be comfortable doing that when we've got some really robust data around, perhaps gender, ethnicity, and impact, across your systems, and then of course we can help them correct for it. So yeah, but it's who's building and what's the purpose, and who's caretaking, the systems that are being built and how that data is being used. So I was heartened to see Amazon had been using a hiring system, but then found that there was some inherent bias in that around females, and they tried to correct it by putting some tags around the word woman, but they found that it still didn't work, and so they've flagged that system. So, a responsible decision, really. We've got to make sure that our systems are supporting our business goals and purpose and values.
And I want to return to this topic, but I'm going to jump into our second news story before we do, Anne. So this appeared in Forbes, and their new normal. I think we're all sick of the phrase "new normal" at this point, but Forbes were talking about supporting internal mobility through reskilling, and the author here is talking about that organizations faced with the financial pressure not to hire externally at the moment, or through the last 6 months, are instead returning to the concept of internal mobility. Internal mobility is not a new thing, Anne, at all, but there seems to be a heightened interest in the last 6 months. Would you agree with the author's rationale as to why? Or is there more to it? And what's your experience around internal career mobility and the challenges there?
Yes, I think there's a wonderful new imperative that is emerging right now, largely because of the pandemic, where we are looking at our internal talent marketplace first. I mean, there's some great business reasons to look at your internal talent marketplace, because if you can fill more positions internally, you're going to get your cost of recruitment goes down, but you're going to get faster time to productivity for your employees as you're taking on people that know the organization and the systems. But I've got a lovely example about the importance of talent marketplace today and internal talent mobility from the strategic workforce manager for Allied Irish Bank. And she put it beautifully, I thought, which was, it used to be about succession planning that we were thinking about, and succession planning for the C-level and our critical talent. But today, we've got a real need for rapid redeployment and a contingency plan for almost every single person across the business. So we need a really robust talent marketplace where we can see capability across all roles, not just those critical talent or C-level positions that we were once upon a time doing succession planning. So it's almost like succession planning for every role. So for example, what she was worried about is, perhaps COVID hits one particular suburb. That whole branch needs to be closed, and we need to think about the contingency about how we get a manager in there and people at the front line. So it's almost like contingency planning and succession planning for everyone across the organization, which is where a talent marketplace becomes super critical.
I had not thought about that angle, actually, Anne, until you mentioned it. It's funny. I'm currently living under private lockdown here because my 2-year-old has COVID. He's fine. It's absolutely good. But he was diagnosed last week, and he's absolutely fine. Trust me. He's had a mild cold for 2 days. But our whole family's under lockdown. My wife's a teacher. So, and she's been pulled out of the school at the beginning of the school term for a month. They had to get a replacement in immediately for that. And since that happened a week and a half ago, she's been getting stories from colleagues about other teachers. Another friend of hers has gone off. Her son went for a test yesterday, so she has to go off work. And you just see the problem now, certainly in this part of the world where schools just went back, that you're going to have this ripple effect everywhere. And then, in unless the company is purely virtual, their colleagues and parents are just going to all of a sudden disappear. It's like that. There's a TV program that was on one of the networks where 10% of the world's population just vanished overnight, just disappeared. And it's like, that's going to happen every month for all through winter. It's like people are just going to disappear from their roles. Like you go home one day, all of a sudden you're not coming to work for 2 weeks or a month because you or one of your families or a close contact has been diagnosed, and boom, how do you rely on people, moving people around? Because you're right. I was thinking about career progression and transition and, what's my next job and that kind of stuff. But what about just coming in for a month? Like how many organizations do you think can react like that? What do you need to have systems wise and process wise to be able to even do that?
Yeah, so it's very much around rapid redeployment, this year and, across the entire organization in terms of your talent supply. The best example that I can think of was Abbott Laboratories, who use our Fuel gigs. Now, we were super proud to be working with them because they became the first organization to release a COVID-19 test showing that you can rapidly, redeploy these rapid response teams for emergency projects like they've been working on, and then to, be able to get that test out, ahead of everyone else is an incredible testament. But the other part of the internal talent marketplace is also really focusing on that reskilling agenda. And in the last 6 months, again, through our Fuel Gigs product, there've been 11 million hours of experiences taken and reskilling actions taken across that organization. So that organization at scale, 110,000 employees, but at scale was really supporting the reskilling of their workforce. And I think they documented 374,000 reskilling actions taken in that last 6 months. So people were, ready, willing, and able. They were prepared for what came at them unexpectedly in terms of having to respond to this, global pandemic. And everyone was hungry to understand more and be able to test and release. And as I know we all are hungry right now for a vaccine, and I'm hoping your little boy's okay. The other example I've got, is we've got to think across all roles. One of my team members, nanny, came down with COVID, but again, that same ripple effect, right? So and all of a sudden everyone's being tested and it escalates into a whole school community. So
I think this, but you mentioned the scale of the potential solution is amazing. And with Peter Hogg, good friend of mine, Peter joins us on LinkedIn. He's director of TA for Middle East and Africa at Schneider Electric. Schneider, massive, big global engineering and innovation company. And Peter's saying that they recently launched an open talent marketplace as well for internal mobility, and so far have unlocked 60,000 hours of productivity so far. Like, that's kind of amazing, like you're talking about something that it does sound relatively simple to just, build this open talent marketplace and the skills marketplaces. And you're mentioning, millions of potential hours of reskilling. Peter's talking about 60,000 hours of productivity so far. In a large enterprise, this isn't a small little thing that you kind of go, oh, it's a nice project. It's massively impactful. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think, very high on the CLO agenda is, and also the, talent acquisition leaders is making sure that we've got a workforce that is ready and able. And I think if we're looking at Harvard Business Review put out a study recently and highlighted that something like 85% of CEOs are even concerned about having the right kind of talent supply, and that their organization's got the right skills for the future.
I'm going to put a shout out to those listening live on LinkedIn or YouTube. If anyone has any questions for Anne, she'd be delighted to take them. You'd like to any insights you'd like to understand around building these talent marketplaces and driving more internal mobility and skill mobility, please do jump in and ask us a question, or if you have a story to share similar to Peter's on what your organization is doing. We'd love to hear from you. And I want to talk to you about, internal mobility and its potential perhaps to solve some of the inequities that exist around diversity, whether it be gender, race, etc., in the organizations. Because I've always thought about not just the opportunity to perhaps, look, instead of hiring externally, which so many people are focused on external hires, and they're almost, held up to such high regard, yet the data says that they generally don't, for loads of reasons, aren't better hires. But is there an opportunity to have more diversity of thought, more crossover of skills, and really kind of use internal mobility as a mechanism to solve some of those inequities across the business? And if so, have you any examples, or have you seen this work well in any of the companies you've been working with?
Yeah, without question, there's some real gains to be had when you have a diverse workforce. So that you're going to get better productivity, more innovation, and you're also likely to get greater engagement and retention in your workforce where you create a diverse workforce. And it's interesting when we're looking at what are some of the priorities across the globe, and this is also from a Forbes Insight article recently, that companies' diversity and inclusion priorities, 66% said that recruitment of diverse employees was top of their agenda. 44% also said they want to retain diverse talent, and 29% were looking at building a robust pipeline of diverse talent. So it's on the agenda. And interestingly, in terms of diversity, there was 28% saying that they also wanted to have cross-generational issues, so that we're creating a diverse from a generational point of view as well, which I really think is important.
Yeah, I've heard about examples of organizations that have done this buddying system, man, where they take, this part of the crudeness of this, an older person and a younger person, and kind of buddy them together so that the younger person learns from the older person's skills. The older person gets this perspective of the younger person in their generation. And like, it's a win-win. Rather than being old person coaching and mentoring young person, it's like, this is a two-way street. We both can learn from each other. But there's benefit here for both parties. And I like those ideas to try and, for both individuals to see the perspective of a different generation, not just one-way kind of traffic.
And I think one of the other things too, I think, with our hiring practices is that we shouldn't be making assumptions. So on my own team, the best person on social media in our whole business is end of her career, and she's coaching the millennials on how to absolutely use social media, for good and for business development, and really how we can leverage it. So it's interesting. We shouldn't be making assumptions about who can do what for us.
Heck no. I've got a great question here from Simon Wilkins. So Simon's is asking, do you think the internal recruiters struggle with certain candidates who might not wish to disclose their potential desire to move to a competitor, i.e. the confidentiality? Like, this is something that I've seen in process-wise. The majority of companies I've spoken to, if you apply internally for a job, it's flagged to your manager before consideration. Do you see that a lot? Is that a challenge, a problem? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's still a proportion of organizations that are looking at their talent practices that have a fear about, a manager gatekeeping and having a hoarding talent mentality. But the way that we're approaching it is that the more transparency you build across the organizations around opportunities, particularly around projects and gigs and stretch assignments, I think the more comfortable leaders can become with that transparency. And if they're able to see their own talent pipeline, they don't have that same fear about losing a talent. So we can start to build out true internal talent mobility while honouring the needs of both those leaders, team leaders, and also the individuals in terms of their own career choice. The way that we also manage it ourselves is that we like to make sure that that the employee has control over who sees what, so they can hide or share what they want to. They're encouraged to, put their full career aspirations out into the marketplace. But they can hide a little data point if they don't feel comfortable sharing that with the wider organization. So there's great gains. So for example, if you get feedback, of course you want to share that into the talent marketplace if it's positive, but if there's some constructive feedback, you might want to think about that yourself.
What happens if I've got five people working under me and every one of them puts themselves in the talent marketplace saying, I want to move? Does that happen? What happens in that kind of a scenario?
They're not, well, from our point of view, you're not necessarily flagged as being on the move. So the employee would start to, put in target roles, target destinations, maybe target projects or stretch assignments or experiences that they want, and applying for that. And so it's visible, presumably, to HR and recruiters, not necessarily to the line manager, who will be the line manager will be able to see who's shown an interest in their project, their gig, or their vacancy, so they can see it, or for a future opportunity, even if there's not an immediate vacancy. But that visibility and transparency absolutely drives greater mobility, greater engagement, greater transparency around who has what. The example I like to give today is that I think even in recruitment we're getting better at transparency and decision making and an open marketplace. So everyone has an internal job board, so you can see an opportunity. But what's been happening is that stretch assignments, they may those decisions may be or have been happening behind closed doors. Somebody gets shoulder tapped and invited into a stretch assignment, gets some visibility from their contributions. But now we're creating a true talent marketplace for that kind of experience as well, so that anyone can put their hand up and create visibility.
So it's kind of it's probably more like an internal LinkedIn, in that not everyone is necessarily looking for a move, but everyone's encouraged to be there, to profile themselves, to share their interests, and they can always apply or express an interest in an opportunity, as you said, not just to move jobs, but to get a stretch assignment or something else. Back to that transparency piece. I have a question here from Peter Hogg, by the way, and I wonder if you've got experience of this. He's asking, have you seen good examples of internal recruiters headhunting internal talent, and any lessons learned, good or bad, from that?
I think, from a recruitment point of view, I think it's all about pipeline building and pipeline visibility. So I think, I'm sorry, I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head of a particular individual that's doing it well, but the enablement that, we can provide around pipelines for all positions across the organization that are fair and inclusive and transparent, and to a certain extent anonymized in terms of person's name and photos, so that we can be respectful of our D&I agenda, but everyone's got an opportunity for their skills and match to that opportunity to be visible and available and managed.
We had Jan Ackerman, who's the global head of recruiting for Oracle, on the show back in, I think, June or July, and he was again talking about internal career mobility, and he shared a story of his journey in the last year trying to raise the profile of internal career mobility. And he was saying that they organized career fairs, so physical career fairs at the time, and maybe this would surprise some of our listeners and viewers, but at the career fairs, again, which were, they invited internal staff to meet their own departments or the company's departments. They did fairs such as how to set up your LinkedIn profile, how to write a resume or CV, which might seem bizarre because they might encourage somebody to move externally, but they were saying this is about bringing a value-added service, and if someone wants to move, they want to move, right? They're not going to move just because we show them how to write the LinkedIn profile. Let's be the person who adds value. Give more than just a listing of the jobs. What's your experience as to that relationship between, how far do you go in terms of helping your team get ready for the next job, even if it could be external?
Yeah, and I think Peter Hogg put it up there quite nicely today, which is, leaders need to become known as being talent agents and talent magnets, and that they're seen as being facilitators of the career growth of other people, and known as being great coaches and leaders, and having an understanding of, if you're growing your talent and giving them opportunities, then you're going to attract other people to your team in future. So having that confidence that there will be that pipeline. And I think I just want to segue back to your comment about, virtual careers fairs. And what we're finding is that we're able to kind of also connect people that have to mentors or people that have perhaps made a move or had an experience or an assignment, so that we're creating this true kind of community of learning around Perhaps somebody's made that move before you or is 3 steps ahead, and may be able to share some specific kind of learnings around that opportunity, but also perhaps sharing some particular kind of skill learning. So as part of the marketplace, we can also provide, a true coaching marketplace, so that if somebody's got a skill that you need, you can transact with that person and create a kind of a coaching or mentoring relationship with that person, so that you've got that opportunity to learn that skill. And it's much more transactional than mentoring was a few years ago. It's no longer a 2-year relationship. It might be a 3-month kind of focused effort around developing a particular skill that you need.
So I'm going to comment straight in here live from Simon Wilkins again, saying he met the head of talent for a large insurer. She was telling him about some software which has algorithms to start planning job vacancies before they become available. And she could predict with some accuracy when people might leave based on historic data. I've seen similar claims, Simon. Can you see AI working within internal recruiting? Do you have examples, maybe that one or different ones you know of? Back to the AI conversation at the start here, Anne, where can it do good in terms of helping mobility?
And that's exactly what we're thinking about a lot, is making sure that our solution, which was built to create opportunities for people and believing that everyone can be at their best, in their work, by fulfilling their potential, going on a growth story. So I think, that kind of data, we do need to make sure that we're doing no harm and also doing good with our algorithms and our data. I think in terms of predicting retention issues, we are able to kind of track some retention predictors, and it's based on your career stage, your tenure, a number of other things, and also your career satisfaction. So that maybe that you're looking for more challenge at work, or perhaps you've got issues with balance, but that can be shared with your team leader. And by sharing that retention risk, what we're able to do is then provide the leader with a coaching question. So say, Johnny's looking for more challenge at work, and we're sharing that data point back with the team leader. But that team leader is given a beautiful coaching question as, Johnny, I'd love to help you find more challenge at work. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and you're more likely to stay. So we can start to shift the retention outcomes in an organization. And we're now finding that where Fuel 50 is being used within an organization, average churn is at 15%, and where it's not being used at 24%. So that's a 60% reduction in employee churn. So you can get really strong gains, and that's across multiple clients. So
it's funny. It's funny. I love the data side of it in terms of the predictability. Again, as you say, Anne, as long as it's used correctly. I remember I was in Helsinki in November at the Slush conference, and one of the stages I sat down at was the founder of a company called Peakon. You probably know Peakon, they were talking about the 9-month warning and the data science behind the predictability of someone leaving can be shown from about 9 months. And the piece that jumped out at me from their data that just resonated really well was that people leave unchallenging work, not a challenging workload. And that one of the easiest ways to mitigate against somebody leaving is make sure they're challenged. And I guess that's probably the big, if you look at it, we talked about it from the employee side of having the right skills, making sure people are in the right place. But we flip it from the that's the employer side. The employee side is, how do I find challenging work? I might not have a boss giving me challenging work, but I guess this is part of the whole system is to create a marketplace for me just to find challenging work. Is that correct?
Exactly. And I think what we're looking for from a career is different today than it was, 10 years ago, last decade, last millennium even. So I think people are looking for more challenge at work. And I was surprised with one of our clients, a large leading bank in Australia, 18,000 employees, but the number one career driver across that entire organization was expertise. People were expertise driven. So if you're defining career growth in terms of developing my skills, developing my marketability, developing my expertise, it becomes quite a different kind of proposition that we need to be offering people, beyond just a position title. And so many of the clients that we're working with are wanting to shift from vertical movement to more lateral movement. And again, that's something that we can actually track and get some significant shifts on, so that more people are moving horizontally. But I think the other big shift is around work being delivered in projects, right? I mean, Johnny, I'm sure you're on 5 different team projects yourself. And so it's less about our job title today and more about our project contributions. And, we need to track those contributions. To say I'm on 3 different projects, I want to get some feedback. I want to look at what my contribution was. I want to bring that back into the talent marketplace to create further opportunity for me. So, work is being deconstructed today, and is less about the job title and more about our contributions and more about project work. So
100%. I like that holistic view of mobility. One of my favorite speakers and authors on this topic is Bev Kay. I don't know if you know Bev. She's a wonderful speaker, and her book Up Is Not the Only Way covers this and addresses this issue. To go, people want more opportunity. When people say I want progression, again, the classical manager, she says, oh no, they want a promotion and pay rise. And of course, some people do want a promotion and pay rise, right? But a lot of people just want more opportunity. They want a challenge. Like if you're working on something challenging that you can, overcome, you can probably achieve, you love that. We all love that kind of sense of achievement. We're driven by that drive to make progress on something. The worst thing in the world is let somebody just kind of be bored. And I think the classical manager, to some of the questions that we've asked so far around privacy and stuff, and I go, Peter, again, just putting that in Schneider, they do not tell the approvals for mobility. Managers aren't formally told until the hire is secure, right? I know so many companies who don't do that, Peter, right? I know that Standard Chartered Bank brought in that same process 10 years ago, but so many others still ask the manager, inform the manager before you can move. And the manager, I get the reluctance, because the manager is thinking, I'm going to lose this person if I let them go. But the reality is they're going anyway. They're disengaged. Engagement is a big passionate topic of yours, I know, Anne. But they're disengaged, which maybe is worse than somebody leaving your team, is that they're staying in your team and they're completely disengaged, and the poison that can spread around everything else. It's like they're ready to go. If you can't provide them the challenge, go find them. But as you said, transparency. If you can, like any other team, see that your team want opportunity, I guess it's not just about moving them around. I can see my team and go, oh, I didn't know this person wanted this type of an opportunity. I can provide that. Does that happen as well?
I think so. I mean, I think that increasingly there's more of a mentality around talent sharing, across the business, and an openness around that. And, as you say, if I'm trying to hold somebody back, and control their career, I think we've so moved past those times, thankfully. Still some organizations that we come across, around the world where that's the case, and perhaps in certain, geographies more than others where the manager does have control of your career, but generally the open marketplace is a win-win, right? And if you're an amazing leader, that person may still come back to you with more skills and capabilities, with that kind of talent sharing idea.
Can I ask you, Anne, apart from, obviously it would be helpful to have the budget and a piece of software that manages it for you, and almost essential. But I imagine that's not enough. Like what's required to make a talent marketplace successful in your experience, right? Like beyond obviously putting the right software in and having that buy-in, I assume you're still going to have to do a lot of things, get buy-in, sell it, promote it, get people using it. What have you seen that works? What would your lessons be to others to say, here's how to make it successful?
I think the way that we think about it is that, a really robust skills architecture, and a thoughtful skills architecture sitting in behind the talent marketplace. So, it's creating a true kind of skill and talent exchange across the organization. So taking some care when you're building that architecture, and increasingly we're really, with our capability library, we're thinking about making sure that we've got some, I'm coming back to our opening concern around D&I and our algorithms. We want to make sure that in our underpinning architecture, that we've really got some, strong principles that are going to support the organisation's goals, and their cultural DNA. And, if there are some burning imperatives around D&I, let's build them into the skills architecture. Let's make sure that we're creating transparency for who has this capability, whether it's diversity awareness or building cultural competence are some of these trending capabilities that we've seen, in the last 12 months, with the COVID era. So I think getting that skills architecture is quite important, and doing that in a thoughtful way right from the get-go. And it doesn't have to be a laborious process. We can create a talent blueprint for your organisation, and then use AI to do the skills matching. So it doesn't have to be the kind of, 5-year project where you're looking at your capability model across the organisation. That's so last decade. So
I guess it's creating a common language in the skills architecture to say this is what we call X, et cetera, et cetera. That's pretty important. Peter has chimed in. I think you'll agree with this, Anne. The tool is only as good as the talent philosophy upon which it is built. Which I think is imperative. You have to have the belief, the buy-in, the will in the organization to basically invest in this as a way forward, not a quick fix.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think having the right kind of charter and defining your principles and behind the marketplace, and also creating some education across the organization. So, a tool like this does become part of your cultural transformation across the organization, and can be an enabler in such a way that it transforms your talent experience, transforms your people experience, and helps with those business goals of, productivity and retention and, all those other good things. So a really strong charter is a great starting point. So yeah, thanks for that, Peter.
So Anne, I'm gonna maybe move to our close and to ask you for your contribution to the shortlist for those first time viewers and listeners. We know every season of 10 episodes, we try and compile a short list of advice from our guests. So Anne, I want you to think about maybe advice you would give us, maybe particularly around this post-pandemic or mid-pandemic world. What advice would you give to our listeners and viewers today from your experience, whether it be your experience with your customers, as a CEO of a tech company that's growing like crazy, or just as an author who's passionate about a subject of talent engagement and talent mobility? What advice could you share with our audience here today to add to our shortlist?
Yes, well, I thought about, from the COVID experience point of view, and I was really inspired by a piece of advice from Rusty Roof, who was former chief people officer at PepsiCo, and, is now involved with Run Coach, which is an amazing app. But the advice that he suggested was, through the pandemic, there's a fear factor going on for people, and basically it's like having a child that's having a nightmare. There's a monster under the bed, so we've got to go in, help our people, check under the bed, turn the light on, show them that there's nothing there, provide some reassurance that it's actually going to be okay, as we can shed some light on what's happening, and share the fear factor with your people and help them on that journey. So I really love that little analogy, and I think it has been useful as we're helping people today create clarity and communicate and coach and and support their team as we're going through this unknown experience. So I think we've got to think about all those factors on a daily basis.
It's great advice. From your employees' perspective, there's a monster under the bed. Turn on the lights, help them see it's not such a monster. Show them that it's okay. Give them a hug. This is really important. The anxiety is high. When you have little ones, family who could be sick, you can go crazy worrying about what could be, all the different things going on. And then you have your work. Is your company stable? What are they doing? Is my job stable? What's happening in the economy? My partner's job? My whatever. There's so much anxiety. I think people just need to be told it's okay. To your point, there's no monster under the bed.
No, exactly.
Thank you. I thank you that advice. And where can people find more information about you, Fuel 50, your book, the solutions you have?
So yeah, I was just going to say that, relation to monsters under the bed, we just put out a work fit handbook, which has got, these tips for leaders helping people through that journey and facing the fears, as well as for employees facing, an unknown and uncertain future. So, how do you make sure you're productive? How do you survive some of these challenges that are coming at us on a daily basis? So that's at fuel50.com. You can find the book on career agility. We're more challenged around agility than we ever thought. Little did we know when we wrote the book in 2015 that the challenges that would be coming at us. So yeah, fuel50.com. We're really committed to building a community and resource library, for people around our learnings around career mobility and creating agility in your organization.
I'm hoping our listeners and viewers can access that, download it, get some real insight from that as well, and help. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Quick reminder for you, Anne, is that we've shared in the private chat a link for our debrief show. And we'd love to kind of have you join there. We can debrief for the next couple of minutes. So do grab that link and I'll see you there. For those of you who are viewing live, thanks a million for your questions and comments. For those of you who are listening on the podcast or rewatching the show, thanks for joining us. We're going to have more next week. I'm really excited to tell you about. Stay on while I tell you about our guest next week. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. We have the fantastic Eunice Clements-Tweedy, genuinely a fantastic woman with so much insight and tons of stories. And she's the global head of talent acquisition for Lego. I know my 4 kids are excited about me interviewing the woman from Lego. I'm not going to explain to them what talent acquisition is yet. They're too young. But Eunice is going to be joining us and talking about how they do things differently at Lego. For those of you who are Lego fans, you'll hopefully be in high anticipation of that show. And it's going to be a great show next week. That's at 4 p.m. UK time, which is 11 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 a.m. on the West Coast, 11 p.m. in Singapore. Google what time zone that is for you in your time zone. Join us live. You can find links and access to the recordings if you can't make the live show or want to listen to the podcast as you go for a walk by going to socialtalent.com/the shortlist. Until then, I wish you well. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.